I remember when I read that, I like texted you and I was like, the arm is where? Hi, I'm Kay.
And I'm Gabe. And we're the Ghouls Next Door. Talk about spooky stuff.
As we have done for a million years.
The world.
In every reality that we could possibly exist in.
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes,
in case you're wondering, if
the
you're
real
worried,
world is stranger than fiction, right? Isn't that what they say? And yeah, we're the Ghouls Next Door, a media literacy show from a horror lens where we explore the real life, historical, psychological, cultural influences behind our cinematic fears. And continuing our It Is Written series, we're talking about another author. So this is Mariana Enriquez. And we're going to be talking about 2 of her books, but she has quite a lot. So have your pick. I will say something that I love about Mariana, like besides like her books, obviously, and her brain, it's her cover design for her books. There's something that gets to me about certain covers, like even for series where it's like they forgot they were a series in the middle of it. Yeah. And so they don't match, and that pisses me off. Like I have a book, I have the Zoe Ash series by Jason Pargin, and each book is like a different book. And it makes me so mad because they're a part of a series. Whereas Mariana has like a set style. She has like 2 versions like of these like books, and they're not even in a series. They're just like to show that they're her books. And I think that's really cool. So if you look at like, she has special covers for The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, Things We Lost in the Fire, and A Sunny Place for Shady People. Those are 3 different books, but they have a similar cover that's really cool. And then 2 books that we're covering today. So Our Share of Night and Somebody is Walking Over Your Grave, plus A Sunny Place for Shady People has another cover option, and it matches those other 2. So like you can see. Yeah, you got to think about bookshelf aesthetics. Like it's really thoughtful that she did, you know. And they're like
it's
good.
Like, they're all very cool, like very art, and like kind of like invoke an emotion too. Like when you look at them. And from an accessibility standpoint, like graphically, they're very high contrast, easy to read, on point across the board. But then like also so visually satisfying to witness on a bookshelf. Yeah,
I will say so. Like for our last series, our last writers that we covered, they both had short stories compilations as well that I hadn't read. So I can't speak on that. But the ones for this month, so for Mariana, I've read A Sunny Place for Shady People. And when we do Stephen Graham Jones next time, I've read his short stories as well. And both of them, I found like little, in their short stories, there are like little hints and like nods to what becomes a larger piece later. So like there are some like that fascination with cemeteries comes through in A Sunny Place for Shady People and some of the stories that I like recognized when I was reading Somebody Is Walking on Your Grave. I was like, oh, that's that. So like, you know, or that's that idea, or just similar themes and things that they're like exploring. You can see in like the short stories to that. So I imagine that Rivers and Tananarive also do that. I can imagine. The world, I just haven't read them yet because there's only so much time.
We'll get there eventually. We have many years to live,
right?
Ideally,
yeah.
But I remember I have this thing where I must look up if someone's going to die before they die. And I did that with this book. And it mentioned, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, that there is a character that we don't get to see a happy ending for in this book that gets expanded upon in one of the short story books. So if that's real, that's rad.
Things We Lost in the Fire includes Adela's house.
Thank you. Okay. So it mentions her.
Somewhere. Yeah, I have not read Things We Lost in the Fire.
Okay, I'm so glad I didn't make it up because I was like, dang.
No, it's good.
I'm not trying to lie on our reputable podcast show, you know.
Well, no, you didn't lie. I have not read that one yet, though.
Well, fair enough.
I was gifted The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, but I never got to it. And then I got Somebody's Walking on Your Grave, and that was my first book that I read by her, and I was like, okay. I was like, who is this? So then I read A Sunny Place for Shitty People, and then Our Share of Night, and I was like, okay, that's it. We're covering her. And I'm really glad we did. I
thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah.
I read Samantha Schweblin's Fever Dream, which is also about Argentina, but specifically about the climate crisis and pesticides, which we kind of touched on in the When Evil Lurks episode. And so this interest in the horrors that the Argentine people have suffered and are still currently unpacking is very interesting to me. Like that's a culture and history that I had not been really like aware of. And so it's through these books and through these really talented authors that I'm able to get those histories, and it's really quite fascinating to me. And I think like parallels a lot of the horrors that we're going through right now.
Absolutely.
Obviously, like the same people be doing the same things everywhere. So,
kind of like the book.
Exactly, right? Like, turns out there really is a cult.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, the more that keeps getting released, it seems like, yes, very much that.
And, you know, like, a lot of people we thought were crazy, and now...
Yeah, they're like, you're a conspiracy theorist, and it's like, no, that was actually real.
Yeah. I don't know anymore. Yeah. So we're going to talk about Mariana Enriquez, and hopefully you'll be inspired the same way that we were to read her books and to learn about a place that maybe you aren't from, or maybe you are from. Yeah, let's hop in. Let's get into it. Because I honestly don't know how long my section is. I just know that Our Share of Night is about 600 pages, and there's a lot in those 600 pages.
I think it's about 700, if I remember correctly. It's the longest book I've ever read in my life.
It's just under 600.
What?
Yeah.
Liar to me. Fine.
It's nearly 600 pages. It's very long. It is a lot, even to listen to. It could be a bit hefty, but it's really engaging and really harsh. And so you kind of sometimes have to be in a good headspace to get through some of that. It kind of does a little bit remind me of When Evil Lurks, in that it's not pulling any punches, and like some of the horrors around children.
Yeah.
Like, what's happening? And I know what's happening, but you know, it's still awful.
Yeah.
So
we'll talk about it a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit.
No, we will. Yeah, so I'll start with Our Share of Night, which was published in 2019, written by Mariana Enriquez and translated by Megan McDowell, only because she did the other ones as well. She's always translating for her. So thank you, Megan. So Mariana Enriquez is a historian. Her books fantasized retellings of the horrors in a tumultuous Argentina, of our dying home, and of the monstrosities in classism. Our Share of Night is an intimate glimpse into the instability and oppressive terror of a country fighting to survive the night. In Enriquez's work, we are invited as spectators into a fantastically dark world confronting supernatural and natural power dynamics, generational trauma, and legacy. Comes up a lot in these horror novels that we keep talking about. I wonder why that's on everyone's mind. Enriquez, having been born in the brief time before a military takeover in Argentina, invites us into the reality of horrors her people endured. Fears of disappearances, of climate disruption, and the uncertainty of trust towards neighbors, friends, and family. For Enriquez, the horrors she read about growing up, authentic and real, weighed heavily enough to influence her writing, leaving us with her heart-wrenching horror explorations, like Things We Lost in the Fire, The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, and A Sunny Place for Shady People. Now, Our Share of Night tells the haunting multi-generational story of Juan Peterson and his son Gaspar. Juan takes his son on a road trip to see his late wife's Rosario's family at their remote and robust estate. Juan suffers from ailments plagued by migraines and breathing issues that we learn are tied to his supernatural talents. And during his road trip, Juan discovers that Gaspar has inherited these gifts, much to his dismay. Gaspar tells us of a woman he sees, someone not on our plane, and in a vulnerable scene, Juan teaches Gaspar how to control this gift and to make this woman go away. Clearly, he sees dead people. Juan's gifts have, in more ways than one, led to this moment, to this family estate, and to his son. Gaspar's mother was born into a terrifyingly powerful cult called the Order, because of course it is, which communes with an otherworldly sinister force understood as the darkness, because of course that is. Juan, in his preternaturally talent towards the supernatural, is a perfect medium for this cult to conduct their dubious affairs in the dark. And plucking him from poverty, stealing him from his family, they've groomed Juan to be the perfect conduit. Only his failing health keeps him from reaching his true potential and keeps the Order from reaching their true power, which is a part of their grand scheme to keep him alive in some way. Later, after falling in love with and connecting with Rosario, the Order shifts their insidious intentions onto the boy, their son. Wanting to keep his son from this fate and from unlocking his powers, Juan steals Gaspar away, and as Gaspar grows, so too does Juan's desperation to control, hide, and protect him. This desperation reflected at first in those moments of education and showing his son how to manage the migraines and shut out the spirits, but this later evolves into violence and isolation. As Juan's health fails, so too does his capacity for patience and compassion. Later, we see the world through Gaspar's eyes, his coming of age shadowed by secrets, grief, and an inheritance of gloom. Gaspar, no longer able to run from his fate, must confront the ever-growing force of the aristocratic order. The novel switches points of view, even offering us a glimpse into Rosario's world, his mother, shifting our understanding of her role in the cult and the circumstances that led to her untimely death. Our share of night is truly horrific and terrifying, has limbs stolen by the darkness, little girls go missing in haunted homes, poor children are kept in cages, and murderers come through planes of existence to inflict violence. No one is safe in Enriquez's fantastical horror world, and it feels like a loud imitation of our own, less than magical horrors. Our Share of Night is a challenging read, and I mean that as an invitation. Nearing 600 pages, like we said, it is a hefty tale that switches narrators, jumps through time and space, and plants you firmly in the middle of Enriquez's dark world. It is a confrontation of our ideals and understandings of the world. And told through many horror subgenres, there's cosmic, body, supernatural, occult, and even slasher, Enriquez gives us a history lesson of great depth and pain. In a reality where real people disappeared in the dead of night under the shadow of a dictatorship, the novel's darkness feels like a natural answer. With over 30,000 people murdered and disappeared during the reign of the military junta from 1976 to 1983, there was a horror felt by the entire country. The novel bookends time around the Dirty War, exploring Gaspar's parents in the 1960s through to his own life in the 90s. Like Enriquez, much of Gaspar's life is under the shadow of the junta. When the darkness abducts children, consumes entire people, and allows passage through its twisted world for murderous men, it's a haunting but fantastical horror. When real people went missing and activists were murdered, it too happened in the quiet darkness, as part of Operation Condor, a criminal conspiracy to forcibly disappear people led by a CIA-assisted Argentine military. It's easy to understand how a mind can reshape the news stories into something otherworldly. During the first chapter, when young Gaspar is on the road trip with his father, there is a fear of surveillance, of walking on thin ice, and fear of the government, which keeps an eye on the roads, but also in fear of the Order, lying in wait for Gaspar's powers. In discovering his innate ability to see discarnates, the ghosts, he also learns of the overwhelming amount of them present at this time. The unrestful dead are many in 1980s Argentina. Enriquez twines real-world terror and atrocities in supernatural attire. For the Order, the lives of the poor were dispensable, a necessary exchange for power. Mercedes, Gaspar's wealthy and villainous grandmother, is one of a number of 1% monsters devoted to the darkness and evil otherworldly power. The arms of the cult are ever-reaching, begun after a wealthy Englishman abducted an African woman and forced her to become his medium, because of course. This ritual is key to the Order, using bodies deemed less than as tools for power of the upper class. Like Operation Condor, it is an organized effort of strategic erasure that has a hold in many places. The Argentine branch has suffered an injustice when one young potential medium fought back, nearly killing the entire branch. But like the Hydra, cutting one head only reveals more underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Reading this story today, not in 2019, feels extra jarring with the release of the Epstein files. Sorry.
Yeah.
Suddenly, an insidious cult of the ultra-wealthy that traffics in the bodies of the young, feeding them to monsters in the darkness, ravaging their flesh as part of a ritual to maintain a greedy hold on power, doesn't feel so fictional. Bradford's estate is rampant with secret tunnels where people are abducted and used as sacrifices. Mercedes revels in torture and dismemberment, keeping disfigured children in cages. Enriquez reflects in this the history of the junta that stole more than 400 babies from their mothers before they were executed and given to other families. Mercedes claims the darkness demands these sacrifices, though Juan, the only one who can actually talk to it, refutes that. The senseless violence is the point, though. That is what gives Mercedes and the others power, because more than the darkness's unfeeling instinctual violence, the choice to harm by the cult is what transcends them into real monsters. The darkness is an animal at best. The cult is a creature. The violence, too, is a tool for Enriquez. It's overt and relentless, difficult to digest for even us hardened horror lovers like myself, made more difficult by its proximity to reality. Enriquez is creative in this violence, spinning tales from the darkest of our nightmares. In one scene, we find Gaspar emotionally reeling after his uncle is found tortured, his chest having been split open and a child's severed arm placed inside, sewn back up again. In Argentina, they toss bodies at you, Gaspar despairs. Which is like, okay, sure. Not in this way, though. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I remember when I read that, I like texted you and I was like, the arm is where? Like, I was, ugh. And like, I'll be so real, like, a lot of the lead up was not, it was horrific, but like, it puts you so in with that character and you're like, you're just like, this guy's taking care of it. Like, and you're just like, what do you mean? It better not be like it. I was like a whole it was so emotional.
Yeah, because it really is like Gaspar can't catch a break at that point. He just like he's finally kind of able to be a kid and be loved and not be always on edge with this like father figure who's like unknown. Like we don't know why he's so sensitive, why he's so angry, and all that. And so he finally gets to be like a kid, and he's like getting a little bit of normalcy. And they're like, "Well,
yeah,
don't get too comfortable. Ugh. Let's do this horrible thing."
Yeah.
So that's one scene, and that's just like to really
trigger warning for you how brutal the book can be. Yeah.
In another, a scene of confusion and terror as a murderer descends upon a group of friends, slashing through them, seemingly coming from thin air and disappearing back into it after the violence has ended. And in every scene in which the darkness eats through people, disappearing them limb by limb through their excruciating cries, Enriquez wants us to never know peace, to not feel safe, to know what it means to live in that darkness of uncertainty and fear. Readers must travel through the other place, where the darkness lives. Access through special doors seen by few, and rarely do they find their way back out, and certainly not in one piece, like whether that's physically or emotionally. The other place is outfitted like a serial killer plane of trophies. The darkness designing his land in a twisted feng shui. Humans grasp trees and torsos are stacked upon each other. Later, a journalist, Olga Gallardo, in the novel, reports on an unmarked mass gravesite near the estate where they uncover the remains of roughly 30 people. We're seeing a lot of graphic stuff, right? Writer Elizabeth Gonzalez James, in an article titled "They Toss Bodies at You" on Mariana Enriquez's Our Share of Night, for the Los Angeles Review of Books, unpacks the parallels of Enriquez's horrifying places with her reality, saying, "The government is slow to clean and identify the bodies. Meanwhile, the relatives of the disappeared gather in a nearby town to wait, always to wait and hope for an answer. There are obvious parallels between The Pit and The Other Place, both collections of dismembered pieces where human lives are reduced to a femur, a mandible. Paragraphs of this section could have been lifted from a newspaper. Enriquez has to ask little of her reader's imagination here. In Argentina, they toss bodies at you. The violence of Our Share of Night is excessive and unrelenting, and that's entirely the point. After a history of murder, abductions, and civil unrest in silence, darkness, and in disguise, Enriquez wants to bring it out into the open, into the light. And as Gonzalez James goes on to say in that article, perhaps in meditating over the torsos, the eyelids, the filed teeth, the bottomless pit of cruelty that lives inside some people, and the bodies that lie at their feet, Enriquez is shining a light on each femur, each mandible, bringing it out of the place where it was tossed and forgotten, bestowing dignity on the disregarded. And even with all these words, I've barely made a dent on the themes explored in this hefty novel. Through Gaspar, we experience the passing down of generational trauma, but also the fight to come through the other side and heal from it. Through Juan, we see the continual failing of parents, the conflict of abuse and love, and even get a glimpse into complicated queer identities and a bit of the horrors around the AIDS crisis as well. Our Share of Night is a challenging, lengthy read that leaves a lasting impression. As someone who knows little of Argentina's history, Enriquez has inspired me to learn more. Our Share of Night, A Sunny Place for Shitty People, and Samantha Schweblin's Fever Dream have me going down a rabbit hole. I hope they inspire you to do the same. So that was Our Share of Night. I also want to cover Somebody is Walking on Your Grave, which was released in 2025, because this book is the impetus for this episode. We had originally intended to interview Enriquez, but we were unable to do so. Still, this book introduced me to her work and inspired me to read more. And so I've since read Our Share of Night, which we explore in this episode, Sunny Place for Shitty People, and again, I own Dangers of Smoking in Bed, which I plan to read. But I also want to read Things We Lost in the Fire. Somebody Who's Walking on Your Grave is what Joe Hill called a grave log, a cemetery travel log. Through Enriquez's personal stories of travel, readers are given a tour of the world's famous cemeteries. But more than that, we're giving bites of history too. What better way to learn about a place through its dead? In the ways we honor or dishonor them, where they are, and how they're preserved. So Somebody Who's Walking on Your Grave is a peculiar memoir dressed as a cemetery travel guide. Enriquez offers us a glimpse into famous and interesting cemeteries around the world. She paints vivid pictures, her physical descriptions like tours through the rows. Readers travel through time and space to walk beside her during various stages of her life. Featuring 21 cemeteries, Enriquez effortlessly weaves her life experiences with the history of land, often lingering on the real-world atrocities that occurred there, staining the soil. She bounces from in-depth historical retellings to her personal journeys. In one chapter, she falls in love. A quick, unconventional summer love, we find ourselves trapped in youth, her emotions heightened and sensitive. Her date is tied to the cemetery she desperately wanted to see. In others, she and her rock star friends travel to highly patrolled cemeteries in the darkness, only to be shooed away by local law enforcement. She finds refuge in the homes of acquaintances who become as much part of the story as the stones. She is fascinated by cemetery architecture, and so too am I when Enriquez shares them with me. It is an education on angels, folklore, and culture. And she has one whole thing about this eroticization of angels in cemetery architecture, and just a really interesting portray, and just how they're always the way that they're dressed and the way that they're featured and who they're supposed to be overlooking. That's really interesting. The architecture alone is worth
I mean, you sold me on the book from what you said so far. I haven't read it yet, and I'm it sounds so very interesting.
Because it is you get those little glimpses of her life, but you also get history because we learn.
That would have helped in my section if I read that book. Oh well.
Sorry, you would have learned so much about her.
I know.
It's okay.
It's okay.
I think it's still very focused on history and culture, and then it's little dabbles of her. It made she seems really cool. I wish I was as brave.
No, absolutely.
was as brave and well traveled as she is. We learn of each place's intricacies. In New Orleans, everyone is buried above ground due to flooding risks. End up above ground, which is where they shouldn't be. The most beautiful cemetery in the world is in Chile. And in this chapter, we're offered an extensive history lesson on the atrocities committed against the indigenous people who lived there. So it's here's the most beautiful cemetery. Also, here's the mass unaliving and genocide of indigenous people. In the chapter. That's It's heavy. On a tiny island in Argentina where the lights go out for 6 hours each night, there's a cemetery with crooked crosses. And it's like, why are they crooked? And they're like, it's the mold, but it's not. And it like talks about it's a tiny little island. No one dies there. In another Argentine cemetery, the cemetery is bright white and barren, slowly crumbling and being taken apart after a rerouting of water systems caused flooding and erosion. I was like, that one, like, whereas like New Orleans, they're buried like in mausoleums so that they don't flood. They didn't do that. And so like some of the coffins are like flooding, like are out.
Yeah.
No, like, oh,
it
great.
Reminds me of the vampire Netflix show that happens in New Orleans when they're there.
Interview with a Vampire?
Yeah, like the bodies flood out, and that's like part of how they get caught.
Yeah.
You know?
She also talks about that. She talks about Anne Rice in New Orleans. Talks about my favorite, like some of my favorite cemeteries that I wanted to see.
Oh, yeah.
But it's
I'll go with you. Let's go tour some cemeteries.
I'm telling, like, I thought I was the only like dark tourist, you know?
Yeah.
And while the cemeteries themselves are interesting, it's Enriquez's exploration of people alive and departed around these spaces that captured me. In one chapter, an artist creates memorials with discarded waste to honor those lost. Like he has these big art installations, and he's like houseless, but he's famous as this like almost like graffiti artist in a way. And he had this one whole shrine to like his mother, and it like exists. Like they knew him. Like it was so cool. And another, we learn of folklore around children's graves. One of my favorites was a boy who was afraid of the dark, and so he kept escaping his grave at night. Like his body just kept coming out of the grave. And then this is obviously not real, but only resting when they moved his casket above ground.
Yeah,
but it's like you're still in the dark though.
Yeah.
But, you know, stuff like that.
I hear you.
In another children's cemetery, Enriquez writes that it looks more like a memorial than anything else. At least I don't see any gravestones. It's in a corner watched over by the statue of a grieving mother on a bench. And on the wall, hanging from the trees and scattered over the grounds, there are pendants of plants and sea animals, white hearts inscribed with names like Alexander and Nita, toy balls and cars, pillows, rattles, a cemetery of baby objects, branches decorated with colored ribbons, and photos like Christmas presents and ornaments. And in Peru, they refer to the children's cemetery as the kindergarten. You know, in her chapter on Mexico, she spends time with their relationship to death through the practice of Dia de la Muerte, Day of the Dead, citing art critic Luis Cardoza y Aragon, saying, "Death is a universal theme of human expression. Yet for this culture, death is not something feared, it's expected. And there's a relationship with death that is tender, familiar, and respectful. Enriquez is thrilled and obsessed with this festival and belief, and that excitement leaches out of the pages. Enriquez shares her fascination, though hers is always one of awe, understanding, and respect, by the fanaticism of these cemeteries leads to them being closed off, moved, or forever changed. She weaves her personal journey, lived experiences with the history of the land, lives lost, and of modern-day obsession. Movies that force the closure of cemeteries either through the fandom of it or for religious reasons. Like, I can't remember which cemetery it was, but they filmed like these kind of debaucherous scenes. I want to say it was like Italy or something. And the cemetery was like, oh, we're Catholic. We can't do that. And so they like shut it down. No one's allowed in there now. And then of course there's like in Savannah, Georgia, there's a really famous cemetery that is covered in a book, The Garden of Good and Evil. And there's a movie that was adapted from it. And so then there was this a girl, I think she's called the Bird Girl. My mom is obsessed with her. And she's a statue, and she's like this little girl. She's this girl statue. I don't know why, but people were obsessed with her. So now they moved her. They had to move the statue of her from the cemetery because people were crazy. So now you have to like look at her from afar, and then it's like, what does it mean anymore? If I can't, if she's not in the place, you know, it's like, So there's that, there's like, what are like, you know, there's, you know, the haunting, the dark tours, which, you know, I love doing, where you learn about those kinds of history, especially New Orleans with some of their dark history of like Marie Laveau or whatever her name is. They also have talk about like books that draw attention, like Anne Rice's Vampires, that bring everyone to New Orleans. They all want to be Lestat, you know. And this dark tourism is well lit with Enriquez as a guide, as she never holds back on the horrors of the world, but also in her vulnerability in sharing so much of herself as well. It's an interesting and unique read that had me itching to not only visit these places, but also to pick up some history books or talk to locals, because this book is as much about the dead as it is about legacy. After all, as Enriquez says, every country is one big graveyard, but we are here to die, and, if we're lucky, to be buried by the living, to have a grave.
No, that book sounds super interesting. I
have so many things highlighted. You would really love it. You know, I found it so interesting with the series so far in the books that I've chosen and assigned for us, because, you know, I think like we have like true horror, and then we have ones that are like way more tied to like history. And I will say, I feel like Our Share of Night can very easily be lumped in there with like Saarland and Reformatory, in that they're like very overt in its connection to that. But I think like the like going from fantastical realism to more real, like historical nature of it is like where we differ. And so I think it's funny because it's like, I think A Share of Night is one that really speaks to me as a reader, because those are the genres that I like. But then Somebody Is Walking on Your Grave is like perfect for you. They're really those parts where she's like, oh, by the way, here's what happened to the people who lived here. And here's like the people who bought up the land. And then like, she just has like intense conversations also about like safety in places that are no longer accessible and why. And then also herself, like she seems so freaking cool. I'm like so sad that we didn't get to like interview her, because I'm like honestly, she's too cool in a lot of ways. So I just like, and I want to read more of her stuff, and I hope that if you are interested in reading her stuff, that you're also motivated to learn more about some of the things that have happened in Argentina that clearly have affected her life, but also the lives of so many, that entire country.
Yeah. No, for like, it's, I will say, I definitely like probably agree. I probably would really love the Cemetery book, but I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed Our Share of the Night, because I remember you were like, it's really long, and it's like, if you want to like pivot and read the short story instead, I was like, no, I'm already invested. Like I read like the first chapter, and I was like, I need to know what happens to Gaspar. I love this little kid, and I need to know what happens to him. And it's a rough journey, but like I was invested immediately, because I remember I was like on my bike and I was like listening to it, and you were texting me and you're like, if you want to switch, it's fine. And I was like, no, I've gone too far. I'm too far in. I must know what happens. And so it's like, it's 600 plus pages, but it's like engaging, you know, like I'm pretty sure it's the longest book I've ever read. Like I am a 300 pages or less kind of book human, because I just lose the attention span, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was hooked the entire time, like even if it took me a while to get through it.
Yeah, but it was like, I think like switching between points of views livened it up. I know some people complain about that, but I was like, I really appreciated getting Rosario's point of view, because I feel a type of way when you have two men telling the story of this woman, or like experiencing this woman's life. And so, yeah, like I still feel that way about Light in August. You know? Like, so when we got to see her life and kind of get, like, she just felt more of a person to me. And I kept like, like I know she's dead, because it's like towards the end of the book, you know, it's like, so I know she's dead, but I still was like, maybe she didn't die. Maybe she's like alive somewhere else. Like I was really holding on to like, but she's so strong, she's gonna do it, you know, she's gonna make a difference. But no, she's been dead this whole time. I'm sorry, everybody, you know that immediately. FYI.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like that's just like the power of the book too, because it's like there was no character that didn't really get more depth. Like you really got to like there's some, I guess, but like But like you really get to understand everybody and like feel a level of empathy. And even if you don't like them, you're like, I at least, even if I hate you, understand how we got here.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that's missing from like real life some of the time. It's like sometimes it's just like there's no good reason why. Like it's just messed up, or people are just, and you're like, why are you like this? And you don't get to know. You know, so it was nice to like even the worst character that you're like, I wish harm upon this character, and they get it, I guess, but like still, you're like, okay, I at least kind of see like there you were trying to do something, even if it was the worst thing, for a reason other than just to be the worst,
right?
So
even like Juan,
like
who's
interesting.
Like, you know, there are moments where you feel for him, and there's others where I'm like, bruh, like what?
Oh yeah.
Sir.
Like, what are we doing?
But there's something about him being able to see the dead and never being able to see his wife. And like all of the weight of that, like, because he wants to, and he also doesn't want to, because it means different things to him. But that's crazy. Like, that's a weight, right?
Like what a curse to have to live. Like the one thing, like the one blessing of said curse would be that they wouldn't be gone. And then you don't even get that. Ugh.
Right. Yeah. So he just never had a chance, you know, like,
no, he was tragic the whole time. And it's kind of like the whole, my mom was just a girl trying to do her best. And usually it's like, I hate that guy. Where you got to like, at least like, get
Juan
the
was
same
just a boy.
Nuance and depth to his character, where you're like, wow, I don't forgive you, but I at least understand that you were doing your version of the best, even though it was awful.
And you know, he just didn't know any better, you know, like he never had a good.
No,
everything was complicated with him.
But let me get into Mariana Enriquez's life. So in my section, I'll be covering Mariana Enriquez's life, the past, the present, and her influences behind her writing. As an author, she has been deeply impacted by the history of Argentina, as Gabe unpacked a bit. So I'll be delving into how that has impacted her as a person, as well as like the worlds she creates in her novels, as well as just like the world in general. Like hopefully, as Gabe said, like this gives you a jumping off point to be like, hey, let's learn about this. Because what? So Mariana Enriquez was born in Buenos Aires in 1973. This was only a few years before the military junta took over the democratic government in Argentina. Much like the story of Our Share of the Night, her childhood was filled with the whispers of people being taken in the night and the fears associated with that, of losing your parents, the anxiety over the awful things happening, and like silence of it not being talked about amongst herself and her peers. And as a form of escapism, Mariana retreated to books and remembers her first Stephen King experience, and noted it was very intense and all-consuming, the kind of fiction that felt so real that even though what was happening was fantastical, you were able to find truth behind it. And you kind of see, I guess, like the influence of like, she was like, I want to do that in my work. So in 1983, when Mariana was 10, the dictatorship ended and the truth of the brutal repression of the regime slowly became clear. And it was an all-consuming reality, with secrets being unearthed at school, home, and all over the news. And her teen years became marked by the horrors of the facts and stories and atrocities committed during the dictatorship. During this time period is also when Mariana started writing. Her writing is powerful, and we have read Our Share of the Night for this episode, which is the longest book I ever read, I already said. But the cool part of the book is that even though it was long, it was so interesting the entire time. Her novels additionally include The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, which Gabe mentioned, from 2009, which was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize, Things We Lost in the Fire 2016, Our Share of the Night 2019, which won the Premio Heralde de Novela, a short story. Oh, sorry. Novella, which is an award, and a short story collection titled A Sunny Place for Shady People and Somebody is Walking on Your Grave. Some additional awards that she has won include the Premio Iberoamericano de Letra Jose Donoso in 2024. In addition to her writing, she has a degree in journalism and social communication from the Universidad Nacional de La Plata, and she is the editor of Radar, the arts and culture supplement for Pagina 12. Throughout her career, she has been an editor, but recently has stepped away from that. She was also a rock journalist for 25 years.
So I said she was a rock star.
She's cool as heck, and still does a lot of music reporting. She writes critiques on literature and movies, and she also writes articles on arts and culture. When describing her writing process and her motivation, she says it is a bit about their upbringing, but also that reading and writing horror stories gave them their language for self-expression. In an article in the New York Times titled "What Horror Means to Me, Growing Up in 1970s Argentina, Fear Was Everywhere. It Was Also Essential," by Mariana Enriquez, she describes it as, "One day a language appears, and finding a language is like finding a home. When I discovered horror cinema and literature, I found my language, the one that allowed me to talk about the terrors I have known." She goes on to describe the influences of this language, being the writing of Emily Bronte, Jorge Luis Borges, Julio Cortázar, and Stephen King, and rock and punk music, obviously. As I said, Gabe says she's a rock star. Additionally, creators like David Cronenberg, which I think comes through.
Yeah. The hand inside
in
of a man.
Of the horror. Yeah. And Clive Barker.
Also,
and she just,
hand inside of a man, that's Clive Barker.
Absolutely. It comes through the gore, the body horror is in there. And honestly, usually, like, that one part, I had to turn it off, and I was like, no.
Mm-hmm.
But like, usually I am such a baby about it. I was like surprised, like I knew it was coming, I guess. So I was like surprisingly holding my own. Usually I'm such like about it. But she describes her early life as a shadowy world where death was all around, but it was a secret. Disappearances have all the direct cruelty of sadism, as well as a particular aura of the sinister unknown. And when the dictatorship ended, I was allowed to freely absorb the information that was coming out in those years. I listened to victims' testimony in trials, read articles in magazines and newspapers about the clandestine detention and torture centers. I learned about children who were kidnapped and given to other families under different names. Many of them are my age now and still don't know or don't want to know who their biological parents are. And she continues saying those were the stories that seeped into her writing and came out in the form of horror literature. Horror isn't the only thing she writes. Obviously, she has a decorated genre work in terms of like the articles that
cultural
she writes, etc.
Yeah.
But it is what she describes as what she most enjoys and what she thinks gets the most attention, like, of her work, that's like people get excited about the horror stuff specifically. And she is able to tell stories of intense fear, anticipation, and abandonment that would be difficult to invoke if not having experienced what she did. And apparently her work has received criticism from other countries outside of Latin America that she describes as being influenced by a feeling of moral superiority, essentially being like, you can't do that to kids, like, in a book. Like, that's too much. Or like the native populations, like, you're describing real things that took place.
Right.
And like the people critiquing it feeling very much like it wasn't handled maybe necessarily the right way. But specifically people objecting to the portrayal of the victims in her novels, claiming they were exploitative because it is being pulled from real suffering, and that she has not personally experienced, and that she's not from the native population that was kidnapped. To this, she says, all Argentines were victims of the dictatorship in varying ways, of course. And in any case, no one, including my compatriots, has the right to prescribe how I should tell my story and what literary language I should use. And she goes on to call it something that's like, I get the critic, like, there's some horrific stuff that happens in the book, obviously. But she goes on to call out something that the Ghouls have spoken on, which is that horror is not just for entertainment. Like, I think there's an assumption of bad intentions when pursuing horror as a medium, just because of how it has been used by other people. Just to be like, haha, scary, look at this messed up thing we can do with a body. And it's like, that's not how she treats the characters, at least from our perspective. And when horror works approach reality, it's usually, in like the best case scenarios, a way of critiquing it and attempting to build empathy, bring catharsis and understanding to the events, that otherwise we don't get that perspective. Like, as you say, Gabe, you didn't know the history of Argentina without reading these books. So like there is an importance to it, the representation end of like, we need these stories to be told because the governments will not tell us.
Yeah.
History will not tell us, like, unless you're searching for it.
Right.
It's not in our day-to-day curriculum.
Yeah, it reminds me of Japan Sinks. Remember when we covered that so long ago? And how that was made as a fictional book because they didn't believe scientists about the dangers of like what was going to happen. And so it's like, sometimes you have to like dress it up to make it more appealing so that people will read. The same thing with like Reformatory and with Sorrowland was like, let's dress it up and make it a little bit more digestible. And I think there's a difference between like sensationalized violence and like this idea of like trauma porn or like that kind of, there certainly are things that fall into that category
for sure,
but like this is like everything is intentional and the shock is a part of it. Like you're supposed to feel uncomfortable, you're supposed like those are the bad people and you're supposed to feel bad and hurt.
And like it's a book for one thing too, like it's not made into a movie where we have to like visually see those things too. So I think it is like a different kind of presentation too, that maybe like in making of the film they maybe wouldn't show all the same things.
I don't know.
Or maybe they would. I don't know. We did see Popcorn Head, baby. Like that was pretty crazy for when evil lurks. But I don't know. I'm just saying like there's a way we can cover heavy things and still give them the respect that they deserve. Yeah. And it can help translate the horrors of real life into stories that allow for kinder endings, or provide jumping off points for greater understanding and learning, which I think this does. Fear does not always have to be bad, and it can be a pathway to growth when presented in a safe way, like a book or movie that doesn't give you any real life or death danger to grapple with. And she goes on to say, fear in my country did not end with the dictatorship. In addition to its traumatic long-term effects, there are other terrors we live with every day. Poverty, the slow disappearance of the middle class, permanent economic instability, exile because it is nearly impossible to stay in Argentina and lead a regular life, bureaucracy, political hysteria, criminal situations, misery, and repression. So like, the reality is also horrific, and it doesn't make it any less real. So something that's very powerful about Mariana Enriquez's writing is that the world also feels like a character. The backdrop of Argentina and the very real threat of the darkness alongside many of the tragic characters of the novel were alive. Like it felt alive. It was its own entity. Yeah. And Enriquez does not shy away. Enriquez does not shy away from current events and recent history. Like this didn't happen that long ago, and I think that's important. Usually when people are writing about historical stuff, or not usually, that's a very big generalization, but sometimes when people are writing about historical events, they push it back really far. So it feels less painful or less close to what we're currently dealing with. And disconnect. It's like any dystopian novel is someone's very real reality, like most of the time, like within reason. Like obviously maybe we're not in space.
Like Handmaid's Tale, you know? Like,
yeah. Like it is someone's truth. It's not pulled from nowhere. It is inspired by real things that seem dystopian because you're not living that, but are someone else's lived experience. So in unpacking this, she says that many Latin American writers work with horror because it is something that, as she describes, is permeated within us as Latin Americans, just as we are permeated by music and festivals and the pleasures of company and after dinner conversation and carnival. Because of imperialism, colonialism, and the influences of external countries, countless Latin American countries have been deeply impacted by horrors in their everyday lives. And it's not to say there isn't space for other emotions or genres, but that the language of horror is something deeply familiar to Enriquez, and is something she noticed as well in like writing of her peers. So in fact, there have been a lot of writers that have developed as a response to this history. You have to write to heal a lot of the times. So in an article from Irresistible magazine titled Irresistible Writers, Mariana Enriquez, Mariana says, in the last few years in Argentina, there has been an explosion in literature, especially from my generation and a bit younger than me, talking about the dead and the disappeared. We are the direct children of the dictatorship. The disappearances have been really ghostly situations. Imagine a body is suddenly not there, but the memory is there. The faces of these young people that are dead that now should be 25 years old but are still 8. It's something very haunting to me, and it is a part of my history, and I'm still writing about it. And as for Argentina now, she says the state of the elites hoarding wealth and power in Argentina has gotten worse, unfortunately. It's like just different. Like the dictatorship ended, but like the structures
the Hydra
still be doing that. In that the injustices and horrors represented in her books have not faded from current political structures. And she says, I think it's worse. Maybe what it looks like is changing, but the same structural exploitation of resources for the benefit of very few continues. The income gaps are worse than ever. 100 years ago, this was all related to the exploitation of the land and the destruction of resources. And Argentina is very much like the American West, but for us, it is the South, stretching down to Patagonia. It was called the conquest of the desert, and it was the attempted extermination of the native peoples in the South. Many survived, of course, but whole cultures were wiped away. The people that fought those campaigns were rewarded with huge parcels of land and became what we now call the latifundios, the big landowners. It's more or less the same pattern across the whole continent. Over the years, some of this old money was wasted or changed hands, and now they have sold a lot of their land to new money, maybe big industrial or communication companies, for example. They're destroying the Amazon, exporting lithium, mining, polluting. It's the same predatory practices, but ramped up. And the money and the old families have shifted hands, which results in people with wealth not keeping their money in Argentina, which I know that the dollar in Argentina is struggling, like in terms of their economic well-being. And they say that it's largely because like the wealth is not being kept in Argentina. Like people are going to Argentina and exploiting the land, but not reinvesting that back into the land in the way that it would have pre-internet. This to Mariana is worse because before they at least like invested locally because their money was with them and they lived there, so they cared about what happened at least in their direct vicinity. But because the wealthy have no investments in the local area and don't care about what happens to the land, it just is like worse. And while Argentina does have the benefits of like free healthcare and education, unemployment and inflation have deeply impacted the ordinary person. And Mariana has always been deeply passionate about politics and says, when I talk and write about these things, people sometimes tell me that I must have strong social conscience or be very interested in politics. But it's not that, to be completely honest. When you live in these systems, it's your everyday life. It's everything.
So that's like when people are like, "Oh, I'm not interested in politics." It's like that's you. That's your life.
That's such a nice privilege.
That's your life.
Yeah.
It's like you don't worry about
like it actually does impact me.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's a thing. She describes herself as Argentine, who has been in therapy since she was 6, so therefore knows herself well. She introduces herself as Latin American because the experience of being born and living in Argentina has shaped her as a person and a writer. In her intersection, she also focuses on the fact that she is a Latin American woman because of the laws that define what decisions she can make about her own body, the labor market and its sexism, and the fragility that prioritizes the hiring of men first. She also describes herself as a freak and a fan of terror and pop culture, and reading Alan Moore makes her go weak in the knees. These are her words. And that she will loudly debate the best horror films of all time. She described herself as a shy and ugly kid and a savage, brutally beautiful teenager. She's candid on her experiences with addiction, specifically to drugs and alcohol, but is now clean. And at the time of the New York Times article, she said she had never lived outside Argentina, but in recent years, Mariana moved with her husband to Tasmania, Australia, after spending about 20 years of being together in Argentina. And this relocation to Australia seems to have been an intentional but hard choice. She said, like, I had to just do it, otherwise I wouldn't have. Like, I'm just so, Argentina is her home, so it's just like the idea of leaving has been really rough. And although Argentina will always be her home, she's said she visits yearly essentially since leaving. And she continues to say, it's always been hard in Argentina, but the kind of hardness that you have there, it becomes more concerning. It is one thing to struggle all the time when you're 30, but it's another thing when you're 50. I'm talking about really everyday things like the rent being outrageously high and inflation out of control. It's very unstable from health services to everything else. And of course, it's very different here in Australia. I've been very social all my life, and now I'm craving a more silent kind of life. I didn't want to live in a big city after being in Buenos Aires for so many years. And the other 15 million people, I love Tasmania. It's beautiful, and we could afford to buy a house here. My husband is from Perth, so it's new for him too. And we've only been here a few weeks. This is when the article's written. So it still feels a bit like a trip, like a vacation. So yeah, that is where she is at now. It's a very recent move. And says that she's still like writing and everything. She's not obviously doing some of the work that she did before because of the time difference, but still writing. She said she has 2 more books coming out, and they're all Argentina focused. So like, it's not like just because she's not living there doesn't mean she's not going to be writing about the history in the world. And it's like, yeah, she had really, as you said, she's just really cool. I really want to read the Cemetery book now, because I'm like, I bet you that would have influenced us so much. And it's fine.
Yeah. Well, I think about she was talking about how so much has popped up with Argentine like writers and culture. So like I mentioned Fever Dream a few times by Samantha Schweblin, which was like it reads like a fever dream where it's like, it's very like, what is happening? Where am I?
Yeah.
But it's very much about like the pesticides and the environmental like crisis and like climate crime essentially that is happening in Argentina. But there's also one of the like TikTok made me read it books is Tender as a Flesh that people really love. People think it's really scary, and I do think there's parts of it that were really rough emotionally, and it's also very much about like this disappearing of people and this desperation, and also like environmental crisis where it's like cannibalism, like people eating people. For me though, when I was reading it, I was like, this isn't as scary or like as like shocking to me, because like the shock of it is that like people are being treated like animals and are in these like, farms. And so like they're like diminished to like an animal thing. So they're just used as meat and materials, which is like,
I remember you telling me about this book.
Yeah, it's a big, it was a big deal. But for me, I was like, as a vegetarian, I was like, I'm already upset by how animals are treated in these spaces. But also,
so it doesn't have to be shocking for a person.
That, I was like, that's already upsetting to me. Like when it's done to animals, so being done to people, it's like, it's also upsetting, But also I recognize that it isn't so much about that specifically, and it's more about like the overarching idea of like minimizing people to objects or pieces or tools, and like reducing them to something as other to make it easier for us to harm them. She has another
that's America
book
too. They have a long history of doing that across the board.
Yeah, that's what is her name? Agustina Bazterrica, and she has another book I really like. So I'm, because of these books, learning a lot about Argentina. I also, when you were talking, was thinking of when we did the episode about La Llorona, and you talked about in depth the Guatemalan dictatorship, and because that was a strategic like campaign against the indigenous people. They were looking for the native population to steal their land and kill them, disappear them.
It's just the same playbook they've been doing.
That's everywhere. Guatemala is in America. When we next time when we talk about Stephen Graham Jones, like it's like, let's bring it home. Let's talk about what's happening here. But that like trend of like, we go to a place, we try to get rid of all the brown people, who care about and have a relationship with the land, and then turn around and hurt it.
And then are like, why climate change?
No, they don't even ask that question. They say that's not real.
No, I know. I
don't care about the tree. I don't care about planting a tree. That's for somebody else. You know?
It hurts.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So again, these are really interesting stories, and they are so tied to history and real worlds. So like, you know, as Mariana said, as we have said several times, right, like horror can be that vessel, right? It's some way to transport you into reality and to at least open the door to curiosity, to want to know more, and to feel, to find that empathy, right? Like if you could be put into that space and you can hurt, then you can meet people where they are. And I don't think it's an exploitation. I think a lot of Enriquez's work feels very respectful, even in the immense violence. And I know that can be a lot for people. And it's like that article that I covered too. She was like, this is a lot. She was it feels gratuitous, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I've read gratuitous. I've read books where I'm like, I don't understand why it's like this. There's a lot of Chuck Palahniuk. There's a lot of Clive Barkers even that I've read where I'm like, I don't understand why you're doing this to me. And like, you know, maybe it's just like wasn't in the right headspace or something. I don't feel that way with
at least when it's like based on something historical, you can feel like there's a good enough reason. I feel like when it's just like for no reason, I don't like that. I'm like, why would you hurt me in this way for no purpose, you know?
Right. When it is gratuitous, when it is like trauma porn, and I think like the point of it is like not for shock, but to be real. Like, and as absurd as like the supernatural horrors of this are, there's real world things that happened, and it's like, no, you like, you know, we're not just doing this to do this. Like, we're not trying to desensitize you. If anything, we're trying to like wake you up. And if we could learn anything, reading Our Share of Night in 2026 with everything that's happening right now, that it doesn't feel that far off, that there is this darkness and that there is this order that has, you know, far reaching arms that are hurting people and have been profiting off of that for what? Like, and that's the thing too. It's like this ambiguous, like, for why, besides just simple evil.
At least in this book, we get that they're trying to be immortal.
Right.
I don't know what the other people are trying to do.
Maybe they are too. Like, I'm not.
That's being kind.
But I don't think that's, like, I think a person who would be going to those lengths to get immortality, like, is a person that believes that immortality exists and that they should be the ones to have it. Like, I just, like, I just, you know, like, they're clearly not sane. Like, there can't be anything about
that's fair. You make a valid point in that way. I'm just like, I don't think there's a magical being.
I don't.
That does the, I don't know. Like, I'm like, but also, who am I?
Right.
At the end of the day, that could happen. And I wouldn't be the one in the room knowing.
Right. I do want to say, like I mentioned, like the darkness is just a thing, right? Like the darkness is just some like like this animalistic, instinctual thing. It's like a weird thing, right? Yeah. But it's not, I think, evil the way that these people are, because these people are making the choice where the darkness is just kind of like doing it, you know, like that it exists somewhere else. It has its own set of rules that have nothing to do with us. This, on the other hand,
and they're
these
implying
people,
meaning,
like, are purposely doing this. All right, well, we made it. We made it through the episode.
We did.
Let us know what you think about Mariana Enriquez or the other Argentine writers, if there's more ones that you want to recommend in films, because I think we really only have one, Evil Lurks. And
at least that we know about. If there are, let us know. And I wrote, like, I pulled stuff from interviews, but they were good interviews, so I didn't get to cover everything, so I recommend checking them out. They'll be in our blog. Yeah,
and read Someone's Walking on a Grave. One, to learn about how cool cemeteries are. Also to learn about history from all over the place. Like, she poking her nose in everybody's business, and I think that's great. I'm like, thank you. I want to hear, like, if she's talking about it, I want to know now. Yeah. Like, these people are stupid. They're not stupid. I get why they feel this way. Taking that back. I see why people say that. I personally appreciate.
Our therapy, Gabe.
Like, I'm an adult.
Yeah.
I appreciate personally her going there.
Yeah, no,
her sharing
absolutely.
stories and that she's learned, and also being very vulnerable about herself.
See something, say something. Yeah,
she's such a rock star. Mariana, if you're listening to this, you're a rock star, dude. And I wish we could have met you. Maybe we still can in the future. Yeah. We'd love to talk to you and learn more and just geek out about. Tell us what your favorite horror movies are.
Yeah, yell at us about it. I want to know.
Yeah, say you're wrong. Don't do that. I'll cry. Don't do that. But I hope you like this, and I hope you, listener and viewer, have also liked this. Remember to like and subscribe, leave a comment, tell us what you think, and don't get married.
Split your kids.
This what I feel like we can't say that anymore.
Yeah, no, we can't.
We kind of have to come up with a new slogan right now.
They'll be really nice to your kids, and they'll make sure that they are safe.
We gotta figure out a new thing. Next time you hear from us, we'll have a new thing, because that
we'll
we
come
can't
up with
be
a new
saying
catchphrase.
Okay, bye.
Bye.